Thanks everyone for joining us. My name is Emily Alfred. I am the waste campaigner for Tea. And I'm just gonna start us off with a welcome, and then we're going to go into a bit of a celebration to hear about some of the great things that have been achieved in the last few months. It's actually been a really short time period. So before we start, I'm just gonna take a moment of reflection. While we're meeting virtually today and we're not together in the physical sense, we are connecting from our own spaces, which are on the traditional territories of Indigenous people. I'd like to acknowledge the Indigenous land where I am and on which the Toronto Environmental Alliance works. I invite you to turn your mind to the land from which you're joining us. This land is a traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We give thanks to these people and any other nations, recorded and unrecorded, who have taken care of this land. The Dish with One Spoon Treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee, and other people who've been invited into this treaty, is about sharing the territory and protecting the land so that the dish continues to be full for everyone. It's important for me, as a settler, to reflect on the knowledge and experience of the first peoples that have called and still call this place home. I invite you to think about how we can use our time to not just prevent harm to the environment, but also to restore and regenerate it, while also restoring and building deeper relationships with the communities and the people we share it with. Our work together has shown that high rises can be places of community. And as we celebrate our successes together, let us be guided by this treaty and the knowledge and experience of the First Nations people so that we build a kinder, greener, and more just and resilient society for all. So I also, I'm excited to be here today because we've been working on this project for a number of years. And I'm really excited that we have so many residents and leaders from different buildings in different parts of Toronto and even outside Toronto. We also have our research partner from the University of Toronto and her students, and we have some friends from the City of Toronto who've been a great help to this project. So thank you all for joining us to think about what we can do together on reducing waste. So for those of you who don't know, the Toronto Environmental Alliance is the sort of the host for this project, the Zero Waste High Rise project, but we're a nonprofit environmental organization, and we have been working on environmental issues for more than 30 years. Our mission is to build a greener city for all, and we work with individuals, with communities, with businesses, with workers, and with government to advance policies and programs that help build a healthier, greener city with a sustainable economy. We work on issues like waste reduction and toxics and climate change. And one of the ways that we do work is we use projects like this one to sort of look at and explore what some of the best solutions are and to help demonstrate what's possible so that can inform our policy advocacy and hopefully lead to better programs in our city. Our project has been funded by the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which is an agency of the Government of Ontario. As I mentioned a minute ago, and hopefully you know, this project is also a partnership with researchers at the University of Toronto who have been providing really valuable support in terms of evaluating the results and helping us design the project to really use it as an opportunity to learn and sort of scale up the solutions. And some of that research is supported by the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. So now I'm going to pass it over to Cyan, who's the project coordinator, to tell you about our project and these buildings.
Thanks so much, Emily. Okay, so thanks everyone for joining us today. Today we're celebrating a group of buildings that have joined the project and taken action in 2021. And before introducing the buildings, I'm just going to give you a bit of background on T's work on this project, what it means to us. And then we'll be talking about these 8 buildings, what they've accomplished, and you'll get a chance to hear directly from the resident leaders and staff leaders at these buildings that made it happen. Okay, so the Zero Waste High Rise project was started to help multi-residential buildings reduce waste. And the reason why T is particularly interested in multi-residential buildings is because more than half of Toronto's population now lives in multi-residential buildings like apartments, condos, co-ops, and this is an increasing trend. However, multi-res buildings actually have a pretty bad reputation when it comes to waste compared to single-family homes. So as you can see in this next slide with the bar graphs, one of the ways that waste performance is measured is through a metric called diversion rate. So in Toronto, single-family homes, they have a diversion rate of 64%. This means that 64% of the total waste from these homes is either recycled or composted. So 64% is being diverted away from landfills and incinerators. High-rise buildings, on the other hand, or more broadly, multi-residential buildings, have a diversion rate of just 28% in Toronto. That said, over the years, T has seen that there are many buildings across Toronto that actually do better than even single-family homes, achieving diversion rates of 80% and above. So we call these buildings model buildings. And 3 years ago, once we started noticing a few of them, we set out to study their strategies, find out exactly, how many buildings like this exist, so that we could share their lessons broadly. And along the way, we also recruited buildings that were interested in becoming model buildings. And for 2 years, worked very closely with these buildings to implement solutions. So in total, we actually worked with 15 buildings between 2017 and 2020 and documented their lessons and improvements. So this included studying building waste. We did waste audits where we sorted through samples of garbage, recycling, and organics to identify issues and track improvements. And we also conducted site visits, did resident surveys and interviews with staff. And after that, we invited residents and staff to also tour model buildings and supported them in developing waste reduction plans. So because we follow these buildings for multiple years, we've been able to measure longer term improvements. Some of the success factors that we've seen that have helped model buildings are removing barriers and ensuring that residents have convenient access to reduce, reuse, and recycling options. This really drives big reductions in waste. And we also saw that small actions can add up to bigger shifts in behavior over time. And the other big theme that we saw is that having a team, whether that's resident volunteers or staff working together that's dedicated to exploring solutions, really helped to develop and sustain a culture of zero waste in the buildings. So based on what we learned from 2.5 years of following these buildings closely, in fall 2020, T launched an online program with a step-by-step pathway that any building can follow. So this program includes templates and guides for buildings to conduct their own self-assessment, as well as tools to develop action plans and report on progress. So, and a big part of this program was also hosting peer learning events online, where interested individuals can learn directly from other residents and staff like them who'd already experienced implementing these solutions. So in total, over 50 buildings have joined since September of last year and took steps in this program, and 8 buildings completed the full pathway. And to me, what's most remarkable about these buildings is that they completed their action in less than 3 months. And during the provincial stay-at-home order this winter in 2021. So today we're very excited to celebrate the actions of these buildings and learn from their experience. So I'm going to be introducing a few groups of buildings at a time. So I'm going to start with our first building called Anne Marie Hill CoOp. And this is a building that's located in Scarborough, just east of the Scarborough Golf Club and Highland Creek Park. And you guys can hear me, yeah?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, awesome, thanks. Yeah, so this building was established in 1983. The building has a 10-story high tower, as well as a few blocks of townhouses, consisting of 135 units total. And the co-op was actually named after Anne Marie Hill, who was a resident of Scarborough East and was a beloved and tireless community organizer in the area. So the tower at Anne Marie Hill Co-op is unique in our project because it's the only building without any waste chute. 2 years ago, the co-op community voted to permanently close their garbage chute as part of a measure to reduce waste. And so garbage is now brought to an outdoor waste enclosure. And since then, they've noticed an increase in recycling and composting and a reduction in garbage. And in 2021, building staff noticed that the waste enclosure could use more information to help residents sort waste. So the property manager worked with staff to design and build an outdoor education station filled with guides on sorting waste. And most recently, they've used this space to put up a eye-catching display featuring takeout food containers to bring attention to how it's important for residents to rinse out takeout food containers that have really increased during the pandemic before placing in the recycling. So this increased information is really helpful for residents to see that, that the building is committed to reducing waste. And our next building is a condo called the Hemingway. It's located in North York's Banbury Don Mills neighborhood by Lawrence Avenue and Don Mills. It was built in 2005. It's a mid-sized condo that has 8 stories and 225 units. So last year, residents in Hemingway's recycling committee created big colorful signs in their recycling room to make recycling and composting more inviting and intuitive for residents. And this effort received lots of positive feedback from other residents. So in 2021, they joined TEA's program to see what else they could do. And they used TEA's assessments tools to review the building's other waste areas. And they noticed that there's actually an opportunity to do a similar type of refresh of signage in each of the garbage chute rooms as well. So the recycling committee actually downloaded free waste signs from the City of Toronto's website, posted enlarged versions in every chute room. And the committee also started working with staff to monitor and track recycling mistakes. So they plan to use this information to shape future communication efforts on a new bulletin board they'll be putting up dedicated to waste reduction communications. And the next building I'd like us to highlight is a building called Kensington Towers, which is a cooperative building located in Toronto's Rosedale neighborhood by Bloor and Parliament Street. It was built in 1957. It's actually the oldest building being highlighted today. And it sits on the edge of a ravine. And it has a section with 4 stories and a section of 10 stories, a total of 250 units. So Kensington Towers actually has a very long-standing green committee, a bit of an institution in their building that works on reducing waste. The building has recycling bins actually in every single chute room. So this makes recycling very convenient, but residents can still make mistakes and place garbage in the recycling bins. So to tackle this problem, in winter 2021, the Green Committee refreshed the signs in every chute room, posting custom posters they created themselves, focusing on common mistakes. And then to measure the effectiveness of their communication, the Green Committee surveyed items in the recycling bins to measure the frequency of mistakes. Volunteers from the Green Committee checked the bins in each chute room every morning for a week and tracked 13 different categories of common mistakes. And they found that 62% of checks showed 0 mistakes, and that the most frequent error was actually black plastic being placed in the recycling. So the team used this data to report back to the community the good news that majority of residents are doing a great job at sorting, and gave feedback on the specific materials the community can still improve on. So the team plans to do a follow-up study in the fall to measure any change from this baseline study they did in the spring. All right, so that's the first 3 of our 8 buildings, and I'd like to introduce the leaders. I'd like to ask the leaders from each of these buildings to join us on stage to share a few thoughts.
Hi there, Jerry Reisman here.
Hey, Jerry.
Hey.
Thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I see Heather. And
I'm coming. Hi.
Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks so much for joining, all 3 of you. All 3 of you had a major focus on improving communication and really inviting residents to be more engaged about waste. So Jerry, starting with you, I know you recently put up new stickers on all your bins. What do you find is helpful about doing this kind of refresh of?
Well, the residents need to constantly be reminded of how the whole process works. Winter tears off stickers and people forget. They're not like, it's not like everything seems really simple. but it actually is when you just put the stickers on and put the communication out.
And what was your process for getting these stickers and all the free resources from the city?
Well, I called 311 to get the stickers. Apparently the order got lost, so I contacted my rep in East Scarborough from Public Works, and with his help, I was able to get the stickers within a week. So
Wow.
that's my contact person that helps me out whenever I have garbage troubles.
That's awesome. That's really good. A week turnaround. Yeah, I think that's useful kind of tip. Just sometimes I think whether your waste service provider is the city or a private waste service provider, there's often a territory rep that could be your direct contact that you could just kind of get streamlined service from. And Heather, just moving on to you, your team has gotten really positive feedback about your team's efforts and communications. What's your advice for how best to communicate with residents about waste?
I think what the recycling committee found out over COVID is that even for us, there was a lot of learnings to be had from what we learned from reading the posters and how to better sort our waste, and maybe things that we were doing personally with contamination and that we were learning, and we wanted to pass it on to the residents. So that's why we got the brand new signs, and they're much bigger and they're much clearer and easier to read. Plus the free resources that we got from the City of Toronto at the bottom, they come in different languages as well. So that really helps. And then the posters that we got, they're very bright in the messages about waste diversion and diverting and reduction tips. They're very eye-catching and they're new. So to kind of replenish the posters that maybe we've had up there for a few years that people just aren't reading anymore, it's really eye-catching, and we've had a lot of positive feedback.
So it sounds like just the act of just changing it up every now and then is noticed. And it just kind of helps people just read up on, what are some of the new rules for new types of materials that are in the market now.
Mm-hmm. Maybe some wish cycling that we and the residents are a little bit guilty of. Yeah. It's all been a learning curve for everybody. So yeah, the free resources have been really great.
Awesome. And I know you also have plans beyond some of the free resources you've gotten, to put up some of your own tips and communications. I know you use a few channels in your building to do that. Do you have any advice for just what kind of tone or approach to take with that? It can be a bit tricky sometimes talking to residents about, things you want them to improve on.
Yes, the recycling committee, we've used a lot of, things that are free. Like I said, the posters from the City of Toronto, and then email blasts through our property manager. So the tone that we've been using is kind of, we would leave a very strict or negative tone as a last resort, and I'm happy to say we haven't had to use that yet. But just a very positive, we want to nurture feedback and participation. Maybe some of the residents have some ideas that they'd like to share with us. And what we want to do is encourage kind of an incentive. It's going to lower our waste reduction costs collectively as a building. The appearance of the building is going to be more cleanly, more tidy. It's going to be more pleasant for our maintenance and our cleaning staff. That's kind of the approach we're going to use, kind of a collective incentive.
Mm. It's really kind of underscoring everything you put out with a vision of what you're working towards, right? The benefits, the community benefits. Yeah,
catching more flies with honey.
Nice. And Michelle, I think it's fantastic that your team, put in that effort, not just to put up posters but then to go and kind of collect data on, what's been the impact of those posters. What learnings did you find helpful from the study? What stood out to you?
Okay, well, it was in a way almost a surprise, that because we get a little discouraged when we find things that aren't going right, but actually 62% of the checks were fine. And then there was 32% that was a bit, maybe one or two items, and only a very few that really needed some addressing. We still have to figure out how to address that. And yeah, and we found the black plastic was one of the big problems, even though it's been repeated many times all over the building in different forms that black plastic doesn't work. It's still in there. And unwashed containers is the next big offender. And sometimes people just put bags of mixed things in to the bin, so you can't really put it in the recycling. So I don't know. Yeah, we learned that. And
I think it's interesting that you mentioned that it was like a surprise for you that most of your checks were actually without mistakes.
right.
Could you speak to how you use that knowledge in your building?
Well, we have a green newsletter, and we also have a bulletin board. So once we got the results of the survey figured out, we announced it to the building and to people and put it up on our bulletin board and sort of gave them pats on the back for doing that good work. And then just slight little hints about a few things that could be, changed. And, we're planning on doing another survey to really give time for that signage to see if it really made a big difference. And what we just had a meeting the other day, I think that educating people around how to use that waste wizard would be really a good thing. Because whenever I type in my own keywords, like my one specific object or something, sometimes it says no results. But if you just put in paper, you get a whole list of all the different types of paper possible pretty well. And you just click on one of them, the one that's close to what you're looking at, and it'll give you all the advice. So I think we want to continue educating people with the bulletin board and the newsletter, and even person to person when we can. We still have to wait till COVID's over before we can do that kind of thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, it sounds like you guys are using all the channels available to you, during this time, and it's making an impact. All right, so I am gonna have to move on, just in the interest of time, which sucks because I feel like there's so much I could continue talking to all three of you about. But thank you so much, Jerry, Heather, and Michelle for sharing these thoughts. And for the audience, if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And I know there are a few members from these buildings that are here that can answer them. And Jerry, yes, you had one more thing to add?
Well, I just had a little thought that maybe might came to my mind.
Sure.
If T could create a collage of photographs that would illustrate a garbage truck on a landfill site, a company that makes plastic picnic tables out of recycled plastic, various things like that, that would kind of that we could display. That might be something we could help us out.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely do plan to kind of put a bit of a directory of actually like all the great creative comms that have been coming out of all the buildings that are engaged in our project. So to that point, we want to kind of work together as this network that we've created to kind of share these resources that we're all creating as to how to message this stuff in ways that are engaging and compelling and positive. So yeah, thank you for sharing that, Jerry. So our next two buildings are the Tamil CoOp and the Salewinds. So starting with the Tamil CoOp, this is a building in West Toronto by Bloor and Lansdowne. It was built in 1984 and has 8 floors, 129 units. It's a really unique co-op in our city because it was actually initially established to provide housing for Tamil refugees. And over the years, the co-op has continued to welcome new immigrants from a number of countries. So recycling and organics bins at the Tamil Co-op are currently located in an open area in the building's parking garage. There isn't a designated room. And so management joined the project initially with a keen interest to reduce waste by improving this space and setup, which is a bit of a long-term project that would take time. However, by completing T's online forms, management found that there's actually a number of immediate things that they could do right away in parallel that would immediately make recycling and composting easier for residents. So they decided to get going with a few simple actions right away. First, they added organics and recycling collection next to the garbage in the building's lobby to ensure that residents can sort waste properly in every part of the building. So this way residents, walk into the building with recycling or organics in their hands. They have an option right in front of them to dispose of it properly. Management also added an e-waste and battery collection area to the party room so that residents can easily keep these special wastes out of the garbage as well. And these initial steps are just the beginning for Tamil CoOp, but they're a great way to start momentum and engage residents in a shared mission to reduce waste. And the Sailwinds is a condo located in Whitby, Ontario. It actually has the distinction of being the first waterfront condo there. The condo was built in 1990, has 12 stories, 141 units. And we're so happy about the Sailwinds leadership and participation in the Zero Waste High-Rise project because they're helping spread our collective learnings beyond the boundaries of Toronto. So the Sailwinds has a sustainability committee that has been working on to green their building for a number of years, and we're ready to tackle waste. To understand the challenges that residents face with sorting and waste reduction, they started by using T's tools to do a walkthrough assessment of their building's waste areas. And they also developed a simple survey to get feedback directly from residents. So these initial steps quickly revealed that residents really cared about reducing waste, but faced some barriers that made the choice of recycling less convenient. So based on this feedback from residents, as well as observations from staff, the Sustainability Committee started enacting a plan to make recycling easier in their building. So far, this has included adding more recycling bins and making them easier to reach, improving signs, and adding an e-waste collection area. And the e-waste area is the first of its kind in a Whitby multi-res building. And the combination of these efforts has allowed the committee to be nominated for a Durham Environmental Achievement Award. Going forward, the Sailwind Sustainability Committee has plans to do more improvements and make waste sorting easier for residents. And they also plan to continue to engage their residents through learning events, including educational webinars. So I'd like to invite Louise and Chris from these two buildings to join me.
Hi, Fyan.
Hi, Chris.
Hello.
Thanks so much for joining, you two.
Welcome. Pleasure.
So both your buildings have identified many things you're excited to work on, and you've already made good progress. To start off, Louise, I was wondering, what did you learn in this process of investigating what to do?
I think the main thing that we learned was just that there was a lot more small tackleable items that we could address relatively easily. The property manager and I were looking at, going into this, we were looking at different projects that we can do to improve the waste situation at Tamil. And we were kind of just coming up with really overly ambitious ideas that was really overwhelming. And then when we did the waste survey, it just brought to surface all these gaps that we could address quite easily and immediately. We just found that these small items can create quite an impact. And now we have these smaller projects to work on while we build up to the more ambitious projects.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like it's something that is motivating, just kind of, getting something done? Has that been something that's been an effect?
Yeah, for sure. I think the staff at the building are starting to see that we're trying to take these steps towards improvement. Hopefully the residents are as well. Personally, I think it's a great step. We have to start somewhere, and I'm glad that we're starting now.
Awesome. Chris, what about you? What are your major learnings from the process you've been on with waste?
If you don't mind, I'm just going to start with a kind of shout out. I noticed there's a lot of people from the Salewinds and Durham region here today. So I just want to say thanks to them for their support and for coming online today to join us and to learn from the others that are here too. I really appreciate that opportunity myself. So thanks for setting it up.
Thank you guys for taking it on so enthusiastically.
Yeah. What did we learn? I think the major learning amongst our group was that we have a lot more sympathy for the challenges faced by our residents in trying to recycle properly. I think when we started, we were a lot more judgmental, and probably some of the others have mentioned that too. We were kind of wagging our finger at people for not doing things right. But all the tools that you shared, the waste collection assessment, the residence survey, and the weekly waste log really helped us to see that there were barriers and challenges that might legitimately present residents and prevent them from effectively recycling and reducing waste. So I think that was one of our big kind of self-learnings, that it's very easy to be judgmental about others, especially when you've been working on these projects for several years, as many of us have been, and to not take into account that people may well be trying to do the right thing and just simply don't have access to the information. And I've heard others say that too.
It's huge. Yeah, I'm glad that that's something that you kind of identified early on, is kind of switching your focus to, well, what are the barriers here? And
Yes.
then really systematically trying to remove them, right?
Exactly.
And so what would your advice be for others on, how to approach that? Like, what's your advice for acting on that learning?
Kind of what would we advise people to do moving forward?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, considering this, it's very tempting to go it alone. I don't know, many of us, I think people who are doing these projects and perhaps leading them have worked independently in the past, and it's very tempting to continue doing that or work with a small group of like-minded people in the building. But we found it's actually the more the merrier. It's messier because everyone doesn't always agree, as with any group of people. But in the end, it is almost always helpful to have more eyes on the ground to evaluate what is really going on and to help make things happen. So we couldn't have done our project without the insight and support of each one of our group. So the property manager, the superintendents, the board, the green team, the region of Durham staff, and of course the residents who actually, I think for the most part, try really hard, and an ongoing commitment from each of those team members. As I noted, when we started out, it was a much smaller project. We were just looking at accessible bins, and you kind of looked at some of the other things we've done. So we feel that we've moved forward because of the support of this larger group, the energy and the enthusiasm of everyone involved.
I just want to pick up on something you said about the benefit of teams. I totally agree that it really helps keep things going. What's your advice for working as a team, especially with other stakeholders like staff and management?
I guess it's the same as working with any team, and again, getting back to our kind of revelation with the residents, that you try and see things from other people's perspective and try to understand what the barriers that they're facing are, and to be open to the learnings and the suggestions that everybody on the team, the large team, has. I think you can easily go in with a set idea of what you're going to accomplish and how. And so one needs to be open to different perspectives and different solutions.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Louise, how about you? What advice would you have for other buildings on how to get started?
Yeah, for other buildings, it would be to do an assessment with a checklist. Completing a survey like the one that T has provided has really helped us cover items that were were just easily overlooked, and it provided us a really thorough examination of the building.
I'm running a bit short on time, but very briefly, could you both just share, because I know how excited you are about all the stuff that you're doing, what you're most proud of as to what you've done so far?
You
Starting
go
with
first,
Chris.
Louise.
Okay, I'll be quick. I guess for us, this year has been really, really hectic for the whole management team. I'm proud that we were even able to accomplish something so small and start this journey during this time. And I hope to reduce more waste in the future.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
And I agree. I think those small steps during the COVID years have been really remarkable. I guess I'm most proud of our weekly waste audit that we were able to work with a way to at least measure the waste and figure out a diversion rate, considering that in the region of Durham, we don't weigh our garbage. And so it was very difficult. It was a real challenge to know if we were being successful. So to have some sort of measure, I think is of inestimable value. It makes you feel like you're moving forward and not just a hamster on a wheel. So thank you. You figured that out for us. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thank you so much for having such initiative. Awesome. So thank you both. And now I'm going to move on to our last group of buildings. Okay, so we have 3 buildings left. And all right, so the next building I'm going to talk about, it's called the Summit. It's actually the only rental apartment building featured today. It's situated in the Annex neighborhood of Toronto. The building was established in 1967 and has 16 stories, 185 units. And a really cool feature of this building is that they have an active gardening group. And they're the ones that led the effort in this building. They started by creating and managing a community garden a few years ago. And then basically members of the gardening group joined the Zero Waste High Rise project to explore how they could tackle waste in their building. So they started by doing an assessment of waste collection in their building using T's tools, and determined that creating a special waste collection area and improving signage would be a good place to start for them. And as a rental building, the group knew that they needed to work with property administration to secure support from the landlord. So together, they were able to find space in the laundry room for special waste collection and more recycling information. So here's just some photos of the setup. The team added labeled bins to collect light bulbs, batteries, and black plastic takeaway containers. Black plastic normally belongs in the garbage, but one of the gardening group members knows someone in the community who runs a food distribution program and who actually collects and reuses these containers for distributing the food. The team also worked with property administrator to order new up-to-date recycling posters from their service provider. And they posted this banner, like a banner-sized version of the poster above the recycling bins, which enables residents to sort the recycling more confidently and creates a very visible sense that the building cares about reducing waste. And the next building is called Upside Down Condos 2. It's the newest building featured today. It was established in 2014 and is located in the Junction Triangle neighborhood by Lansdowne and DuPont. And it has 13 stories and 303 units. So the green team at this condo heard about used cooking oil collection from a tea learning event. They decided that this would be a really great project for their building to reduce waste and cut plumbing costs caused by cooking oil going down the drain. So the team started by researching service providers and they prepared a plan to property management and the board. And they set up a collection area in the parking garage. And as you can see in this photo, the green team actually created a lot of different communications, posters that used humor to promote the program and explain the benefits. And when setting up the cooking oil collection, the team also took the opportunity to set up an area to collect other special waste. and this has recently expanded to collect reusable goods as well. All right, so our last building, certainly not least, Queen's Harbour. It's a condo community located in Toronto's Queens Quay West neighborhood. It was established in 2000, and the condo consists of 2 twin buildings, each 11 stories tall, with a total of 276 units. So a couple of residents at Queen's Harbour had wanted to tackle waste for some time. And after joining Zero Waste High Rise Project, they determined that starting a formal green team for their building would be a good starting point. They got their board's approval to do so. And then by attending more learning events and hearing from other buildings, the team decided that creating a sharing shelf would be a good first project for this new team. So they'd already noticed that residents were leaving reusable goods in the recycling room, and they'd seen how sharing shelves had contributed to encouraging reuse in other buildings. So, organized to get one off the ground very quickly. The team received their, approvals from staff and the condo board. They developed custom signs and posters and announced the new project in the building's Facebook group. And the sharing shelf has been really popular, a lot more popular than they anticipated, with very frequent turnaround of items such as books, toys, kitchenware, electronics. And now the green has kind of expanded in this area, based on its popularity, to include a whiteboard with tips and put up other types of educational posters. All right, so I'd like to invite the leaders from this building to join me for a discussion.
Hi, Cyan.
Hey, Leanne. Hey, Barry.
Hi.
Thanks so much for joining. Hi, Nuri.
Hello.
Thank you three for joining us today. Really appreciate the time. So I kind of want to talk about how each of your buildings added new ways for residents to reduce waste. And all three of you had to first pitch the idea to a building decision maker. You're all residents. So starting with you, Nuri, what's your advice for residents with an idea looking to get management buy-in?
Start early, have a discussion, and not make out an entire plan, but have an open discussion on what you hope to achieve, and make it easy for the building managers. You don't want to add extra work for them to do. You want to make it as easy and seamless as possible. So start small, but start the discussion early.
So it sounds like a piece there is not just kind of having an open conversation, but approaching it from how could we be of service to you and do something take something off your plate type of approach?
Yes, and invite them as part of your team and not just somebody to go for last minute decision making and permissions.
Gotcha. Barry, what's your thoughts on this? What's your thoughts on how residents can approach management and the board with new ideas?
Well, basically what she said, I think you do have to be prepared. It's easy for people who are inclined towards environmentalism to think everybody's immediately going to accept what you want to do. It was important for us to get management involved, and also because we had the prospect of working with you and having support from you, that was attractive to them, and because our building has had some really serious problems with grease because of some poor design issues, spending thousands and thousands of dollars on that. That was attractive to them. So yeah, it was pointing out the advantages that that the building would have financially was a big part of that. Yeah, and yeah.
Awesome. Leanne, kind of from a different angle in terms of starting something new, I want to start on kind of the fact that you guys started a brand new green team. What's your advice for other residents on getting something like that started?
Well, I would say that the points that Nuri and Barry brought forward are really important. So you do need buy-in from both management as well as the board. But that being said, it's really developing the nascent energy of the residents of the condo neighborhood to move these things forward. We were really surprised at how keen and engaged people wanted to be. And very quickly, we developed a small group of 8. This was led by Karen, who can't be here tonight, but she had worked for several years trying to find that opportunity to make a move towards greener living in our building. And for us, it was really finding that opportunity, which T did help us with that. So for sure, the resources, the education that we gleaned from particularly the online resources were really substantial. But then finding a community of people who are like-minded was really helpful. So at the grassroots level, building it from within really helped us. That being said, to move some of these initiatives forward, you do require management, staff, and the board approval. So that was a really big piece of this for us. But with the engagement of our residents, that really made it possible. And the other piece, which I think Barry mentioned, and possibly Nuri, making it relevant to the management, the staff, and the board. For us, we started really small with the sharing shelves just to make our way into the greener living scenario. But we have bigger plans, and really it's framing it so that it is relevant, either from a fiduciary point of view and a cost lowering perspective, and also for the staff, making sure they know that it's not extra work for them. It's a green team. We're taking this on. We are volunteers because it's meaningful to us, and we're working with allyship with our staff as well as the management and the board. So that was the package that for our condo building really made it work.
That's awesome. I want to just pick on something there on, again, it's a point that all of you guys touched on, which is framing it in a way, what you want to do is something that's not going to add more work to management. And Barry touched on, looking at benefits. I'm curious, like, how did you frame the sharing shelf as a way that would be benefiting to the building? What was your approach to that?
For us, it was really with the staff. So Karen, again, my resident friend of mine, who had noted for years that our staff were really tasked, unfortunately, with dealing with these items that were otherwise reusable, but they were just being put beside the garbage bins because nobody had a real sense of what they could do with them. So it was adding time and effort to the staff. And obviously, it was also adding to the cost from the garbage collection perspective. So she had been communicating with the staff for several years on this. So for us, when we learned from one of the T webinars that we had attended, that other buildings had done a sharing shelf, we thought, what a fantastic, easy opportunity. It's the low-hanging fruit. These are objects that otherwise would be reusable, and it would immediately help alleviate some of the workload for the staff in figuring out what to do with these items that otherwise really should not be going to landfill. So it was win-win very early because the staff knew, and it was very clear, we communicated with them. This was not on them, that the green team was taking this over to work with our condo residents, sharing information with email blasts and notifications that this is brand new. Please do not put those usable goods near the garbage, by the garbage, in the garbage. Put them on the sharing shelves. And honestly, it has been this really neat boutique little space in our recycling room that honestly, we check it twice weekly, and the items that are moving off the shelf are quicker than some department stores that I've been in before. So it was win-win in that sense, but really helping the staff just take something even away from them that should not be their responsibility. It worked really well.
That's awesome. I see that you already have a few questions in the chat. Neri, I want to ask you, what are you most proud of in terms of what you've been able to achieve in a very short time in your building? And what kind of lessons did you glean from that?
Well, I think we just basically creating an awareness in the building. Some residents been in the building for a long time, but not really knowing how to best recycle and where to take the household hazardous waste. So just providing awareness, information, small things like that. Just getting to know each other in the building through this project in itself is a success.
So are you saying that just starting this kind of thing has helped you maybe connect more with other residents in your building? Is that what you're speaking to?
Yeah, definitely. I think you mentioned that we are the only private rental building in this cluster of groups. And there's people kind of move in and out, but then there are some residents who've been here 30 years. And this kind of initiative kind of gets people to talk about the issues and get to know them a little bit. And I think it's just one more step to sort of bring a more human face to the recycling and waste management project.
Yeah, no, living in a rental myself, I could kind of feel, there's not much sense of community. So I could totally see how just doing something like this really helps, bring down some of those walls. Barry, real quick, can you share a few words on what you're most proud of as to what you've achieved with your team?
Yeah, well, I'm very proud of the committee because they worked very hard, and but just we were surprised, but how when we set up the household hazardous waste thing, we were really surprised that it just immediately was filled up. I thought it would be a whole propaganda exercise. It wasn't at all, and also just regarding what Leanne was calling a sharing shelf, that people we didn't plan it. People spontaneously started using that area for that as well. So then we kind of followed the residents and stuck up a sign saying, take something, leave something. And that's been cooking along too. The one part I thought we're not working too well was the oil. And then I just recently have seen a couple of people using it quite a lot. So I'm glad of all that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you to all of you. I'm going to move on and wrap up because we're almost at time. Thank you so much for sharing your lessons.
My pleasure.
All right, so I'd like to thank all the building leaders that shared their experiences and time today. It's really, really inspiring to hear what you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time during a pandemic. Congratulations again for this change and momentum you've created, not just in your communities, but now through this network, buildings all across the city and in fact, Ontario. All right, so if I was to try to encapsulate what I think is common across all the stories we've heard today, I would say that the most important thing is to just get started. Even though many of us have big systemic changes we'd love to see in our buildings, just starting with simple improvements help to build momentum and engage the community towards these larger goals. And the other common theme is to work as a team. By sharing the work between residents and by engaging staff at the building, efforts to reduce waste are more effective and can be sustained over the long term. So in conclusion, our event, we'd really appreciate your feedback on how this went. We've shared a link in the chat that you can copy and paste into your browser to complete. Going forward, T will continue to study the progress of buildings that are working on reducing waste. This includes following up with buildings we featured today for updates, as well as new buildings that join the project. So if you're just getting started in our project, we encourage you to get in touch, share progress reports with T. As I mentioned, this really helps T to capture the overarching challenges that buildings across the region face with waste, and then present these findings to both government and business stakeholders to create better supports for us all to have an easier time at reducing waste. And based on our learnings, we'll also continue to publish resources and spotlights on the Zero Waste High Rise project in our section of the website that's dedicated to that. So yeah, thank you again for joining us today, taking your time after work for many of us to be a part of this celebration.